Welcome to the first of 4 episodes where Dan goes shopping. Now, I don't often get wine at supermarkets. I tend to get it at estates. I love going and visiting. But if you live up in Johannesburg, as I do, it's not always the easiest thing to do. And so what I'm doing over the next 4 weeks is heading out armed with 500 Rand and trying to find a decent but entry-level bottle of white and then a more expensive bottle of white, and doing the same again with red and trying to get those 4 bottles to come in at 500 Rand or under, seeing what's out there. And to be honest, it was a great deal of fun. I haven't been shopping for a while when it comes to wine, and just perusing the different shelves, seeing what's on offer and seeing what I could make out of my 500 Rand was a great deal of fun. And the first one I do out of the Checkers Pick and Pay Spar and Woolworths Assault is Checkers. That was my very first one. Now, I didn't tell anybody I was coming, and I just went to one that was nearby, so purely based on what was accessible for me. And I started off with Checkers, and these are the 4 wines I have. And the first of them is very much an entry-level white. Although it's an entry-level white that, judging by the stickers, some people rather like. It has got a Grand d'Or from Michelangelo. That means it is, according to the Michelangelo team, an extremely good bottle of wine. But it's a bottle of wine that costs 39 Rand at Checkers. So not really something that screams top end of the market. But if the Michelangelo people have given it a Grand d'Or, it can't be all bad, and Chenin Blanc is generally, I find, a lot better than people give it credit for, so maybe this is a really pleasant surprise. Now, a 39 Rand bottle of Chenin Blanc should by rights be used for cleaning up gutters or removing stains, but this is a wine that's received some accolades, so I thought I'd give it a go. This is our first wine from the 500 Rand budget. And I would never have put that at a 39 Rand wine. There's nothing abrasive about it. There's nothing scouring the top of your palate or suggesting that heartburn is just seconds away. It's not blow your socks off, but it is very, very nice indeed. It's a lot smoother than I was anticipating, given both price point and the fact that it's a very young wine. And it's got a really nice feel to it. There's lots of fruit to it. It's a bouncy, buoyant wine. I think this is really nice, and I'll definitely buy a little more of this, especially at 39 Rand a bottle. So the second bottle I came up with at Checkers was this, from Plaisir de Merle. It's an estate I've spent a little bit of time at, and they do make some very nice wine. And this is their Chardonnay at 115 Rand a bottle. It was the single most expensive bottle of white wine I could find, and so it ticked the right box for me as I looked to spend my 500 Rand. Now, it's wrapped in paper, which is often a good sign, but as you can see, not very elegantly so. And that was the one downfall with my visit to Checkers. It was beautifully wrapped, but they had to take the paper off to scan it and pay for it. So a word of advice, if you want to keep it looking this good and make your customers happy, maybe ShopRite find a different way to scan the wine so you don't have to unwrap it and then redo it so it looks as though my 2-year-old has packed a Christmas present. Naturally, what you'd expect from a 115 Rand bottle of wine is slightly more than what you'd expect from a 39 Rand bottle of wine, and particularly from a Chardonnay. If it's a 115 Rand bottle of Chardonnay, you want something that's got that big, creamy, strong, royal feel to it, and I expect that's what we'll get. On colour, at least, it's looking very promising. 2015, so it's had a little bit of time, and on nose, it's extremely promising. That is lovely. That's nudging into that almost cliched butterscotch type space, but not too many other words for it. It's got a bit of dried fruit to it. It's a lovely feel. It's got a sort of vanilla finish to it. Just sits very, very comfortably on the palate. 115 Rand bottle of Chardonnay. A little more expensive than you might normally want to pay for your white wine, but if you want an investment bottle and something that I think will last, as Chardonnay can, and we've shown that on this show before, then this is no bad option. So with the 2 whites done, onto a red, and what I normally do if I'm in a space where I'm looking at a wine that's not so expensive or isn't quite as old as I'd like it to be and I'm drinking red, and that is to go for a Merlot. It's generally going to be just a bit softer, a little bit smoother, and if it's a slightly cheaper or slightly younger wine, or in this case both, then a safety first approach. A Laborie owned by KWV. If you have a look at the back of the bottle, you probably won't be able to see it from there, but some details on the export to Germany, which tells you where most of this wine is probably headed. But we've got some here in South Africa, picked some up at Checkers, and this is a 59 Rand bottle of Checkers Merlot. You might remember we had an entire show devoted to Merlot and trying to get rid of that stereotype that casts Merlot as being a little bland, a little ordinary. This isn't the most expensive one, so I'm not expecting to fall off my seat with astonishment, but I am hoping it'll be a nice glass of red. And it's not too bad. It's a little sharp for my liking, a little spiky on the palate, but it's pleasant enough, and at 60 Rand it's kind of what you'd probably expect. It's not a bad bottle of wine, it'll drink nicely enough, and for a midweek bottle that you're not looking to spend too much money on, I think this will do the trick. And then on to the last of our Checkers red, and heading up to the Swartland and to Allesverloren, all is lost. I remember my late Uncle Martin giving me a bottle of this when I'd broken up with a university girlfriend and was convinced that the world had come to an end. I didn't quite understand the irony then, I certainly do now. Allesverloren make a great Tinta Barocca. They make some lovely Cape Vintage, port style wine, which we can't say, otherwise we'll upset the Portuguese. But they also make some really good Cabernet Sauvignon. It's a nice dry area. A lot's made of the Swartland Revolution, the newer guys making some very interesting, exciting wine. This is more the old school stuff, the guys who've been there for a very, very long time and making the more traditional wine. And this was quite a nice find in a dark little corner of my local Checkers, the 2015 Cab Sav. So for an area that's well known for making the Cape Vintage style wines, not surprising there is a deep ruby look to this particular wine. It's a dry part of South Africa. Much of the Western Cape sadly is very dry at the moment, but that area of the Swartland a little more so. But it does give a terroir that lends itself to making some quite intense wine, and some wine that, particularly with a Tinta Barocca, which I love, has got such a distinctive flavour. The Cabernet Sauvignon, I suspect, will also have its own particular hallmark. Let's find out. And it does have that particularly dry feel to it. It disappears off the palate very quickly. There's still a richness to it, and it is a very smooth wine. It's probably a good 3 or 4 years younger than I'd ideally be drinking it, but at 134 Rand, it's the top wine you can get, certainly in my local Checkers. So one to buy, either give to somebody as a nice gift or stick in your cellar, keep for a few years' time, and not a bad investment. So in total, I spent 340 Rand or thereabouts, give or take a few cents, at my local Checkers. I had 500 Rand to spend, but I bought the most expensive bottle of white and the most expensive bottle of red, and I still couldn't get to the top end of my budget. And that's no bad thing. It means there's a lot of good value for money to be found, but they're not looking at the top end of the market. Interestingly, there was a lot of very expensive single malt and some French champagne available in the same space, so clearly the wine market that's being targeted at this particular store not operating in quite the same space. So nothing here that's absolutely blown me away, but I did think that Neil Ellis at 39 Rand makes exceedingly good value, and that Chardonnay from Plaisir de Merle very, very pleasant indeed. So 340 Rand got me 4 more than decent bottles of wine. Next week we head over to Pick n Pay and see what 500 Rand gets us there. Cheers.